In 1965 in London, a band formed and called themselves the Small Faces, but they only recorded 4 albums before they broke up. Their lead guitarist left, and then the 3 remaining members decided, well, we need a new guitarist and we need a new singer. So they went out and found a couple of guys, and then fought their record company to rebrand themselves as Faces. Now, the Faces only put out 4 albums. So between the Small Faces and the Faces, there were only 8 albums in their career. But what an incredible 8 albums they turned out. So how did the Small Faces become the Faces? That's a story, and there's lots of music involved. Let's drop the needle. Now, before I get started, before the break there, I just said there's lots of music involved. And there is. And we'll talk about it. But unfortunately, we won't play any of it. Now, I've mentioned this before, but in the comments now, some of you are coming in and just watching some of the later episodes are wondering, why doesn't he play the music? Believe me, I would love to. But YouTube will not allow me to do that. It's always a copyright infringement if I put any snippet of any song on any of these episodes. And once you get a copyright strike, lots of things bad can happen to you. They can prevent you from having this episode seen anywhere in the world. They can, close your channel. Lots of stuff can go wrong. So as a result, unfortunately, and I really wish I could, I can't play any of the music for you. But what's interesting, if you go searching around on YouTube, you'll probably find it anyway. And how those people get away with including the music, well, maybe it was before YouTube's algorithm got smart enough to catch it. I don't know. But you can find the music out there. I wish I had a way to put it into the episode. At the beginning, the Small Faces were really an R&B soul band, powered by the strong vocal voice of Steve Marriott. They got signed to Decca Records, and they released a first single, What You Gonna Do About It, which was a hit in the UK, but was never even released in the US. And then they followed that up with another single, I Got Mine, which, again, wasn't released in the US and didn't even chart in the UK. Then in 1965, they released a third single, Sha-La-La-La-Lee, and it charts. It reached number 3 in the UK. They start touring, and they played at big crowds throughout England and Europe. Then in 1966, they released their first album, called simply Small Faces. Standout songs are the Sam Cooke song, Shake, One Night Stand, of course the single What You Gonna Do About It, E to D, and the other single, Sha-La-La-La-Lee. The album hit number 3 in the UK, but wasn't even released in the US. In 1967, they leave Decca Records and join up with a new label called Intermediate, and they release their album there. It's their second album, but guess what? It's called the same as their first album. It's called Small Faces. The lead-off song is great. Tell Me, Have You Ever Seen Me? Others are Happy Boys Happy, My Way of Giving, which I like a lot, Get Yourself Together, Up the Wooden Hills to Bedfordshire. It was a hit in the UK, but again, wasn't even released in the US. But finally in 1967, they hit the US in a big way with their smash single, Itchy Coo Park. And so naturally, an album finally comes out in the US. And the album is called There Are But 4 Small Faces. And it contains not only Itchy Coo Park, but tracks from their previous 2 albums in the UK. Besides Itchy Coo Park, I like Talk to You, My Way of Giving, Tin Soldier, and Here Comes the Nice. A year later, in 1968, they release another smash single, Lazy Sunday. Then in 1969, the Small Faces released the album that I consider their masterpiece. It's called Ogden's Special Nut Gone Flake, and it's the one in the round cover, which I've talked about in a previous episode. You should check that out. This is really a great album. It's a classic, and I like Afterglow, Rennie, Lazy Sunday, Happiness Stan, and Happy Days Toy Town. The album was a hit, but the band had a problem. There was no way to reproduce it live on stage. They tried, and it caused for great tensions inside the band. And at one live gig, Steve Marriott got so frustrated that he stormed off stage screaming, "I quit." And he did. Quickly, the record company decides to put together a double album called The Autumn Stone. Now, when I bought this album, I had no idea that the Small Faces had actually already broken up. The album's kind of interesting. It contains material that had already been released and then some live tracks that hadn't. Now, on a side note, the band did in fact regroup in 1977 with an album called Playmates, followed up with 78 in the Shade, but neither album really sold, and so the band called it quits again. But back in 1969, when Steve Marriott storms off the stage, he leaves, quits the band, and goes and forms a new band called Humble Pie with Peter Frampton. So as I said, the other three members decide, well, we need a new guitarist and we need a new singer. And so they went and picked as their guitarist Ronnie Wood and as their singer Rod Stewart. Now, Stewart and Wood were already very well known because of the success of them being in the Jeff Beck group and playing on those two terrific albums, Truth and Beckola. You should check those out as well. But by joining the Small Faces, Stewart and Wood bring instant notoriety to the band. In March of 1970, the new group releases their first album. Now, in the UK, it's called Faces First Step because they figured they were a new band. But they had to fight the record company because in the US, they wanted to make sure they still capitalized on Small Faces. So the album in the US is called Small Faces First Step. It's a rollicking first album. It leads off with Wicked Messenger, the Bob Dylan song. Then there's Shake, Shudder, Shiver, my favorite on the record, Around the Plinth, Flying, and Three-Button Hand-Me-Down. But Rod is a pretty busy guy. Just 2 months after this, he releases his second solo album, The Amazing Gasoline Alley, and it features all of the Faces, and it becomes a big hit. So as a result, both the Faces and Rod Stewart become huge stars. In 1971, the Faces released their second album, and it's called Long Player. The lead-off, Bad and Ruin, is a rocker. I like Sweet Lady Mary, and then they cover Paul McCartney's Maybe I'm Amazed, which was recorded live at the Fillmore East. Then there's Had Me a Real Good Time, and another live recording, this time of I Feel So Good. The Faces were gaining a reputation as a hard, partying rock and roll band. Now, you know what they say, strike when the rod is hot. So Rod goes back in the studio with some of the Faces and comes up with another solo album, which is called Every Picture Tells a Story, and it contains the amazing worldwide hit, Maggie May. Bolstered by Rod's worldwide success, the Faces go back into the studio to record a Faces album, which is called A Nod is as Good as a Wink to a Blind Horse. It's their best-selling album, containing the big hit Stay With Me. There's also Miss Judy's Farm, You're So Rude, and their take on Memphis. It was during the tour to support this album that I saw the Faces when they came to Los Angeles and played the Forum. That was an amazing show. You remember I said the Faces only recorded 4 albums. So in 1973, they recorded their last album, and it's called Ooh La La. Now, this was a very difficult album for them to record. The tensions were running very high in the band. Rod was becoming such a superstar in his own right that he couldn't even be bothered to come into the studio to record some of the tracks. So it's not one of my favorite Faces albums, but I do like Cindy Incidentally, Fly in the Ointment, and Ooh La La. But after just 4 albums, like the Small Faces, now the Faces were also finished. Rod Stewart went on to fame, fortune, and Las Vegas residencies. Ronnie Wood put out a couple of solo albums, and then he joined the Rolling Stones. Ian McLagan, well, he tours as a sideman for the Rolling Stones. Ronnie Lane, well, he teamed up with Pete Townsend on a couple of records, But then in 1977, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and died. And Kenny Jones joined The Who as their drummer after the death of Keith Moon. So they may have started as the Small Faces, but just think about all the music and memories that they created. Now, if I had to pick just one favorite song, I can't. I'm going to pick one from each band because their sounds are vastly different. So from the Small Faces, of course, it has to be Itchy Coo Park. And from the Faces, it'll be Stay With Me. Lots of incredible music, and ooh la la, the memories. Thanks, guys, and thank you for watching, and keep a rockin'. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.